If you're thinking about buying or selling property, understanding what the market is doing and how it's trending is important to know. If you're a property owner and you have investment in real estate, you're building equity through the home that you live in, well, the way in which our market is trending is also important to know. I'm Emily Price with the Price Group at Keller Williams, and come along with me as we do our monthly conversation that digs into the facts of understanding just exactly how our local housing market is trending, helping you to understand whether it's moving towards buyers or sellers or moving away from buyers or sellers. What direction are we going? What does it even mean? Join me for this conversation and I'll walk you through it. So when we're looking at the monthly real estate market update when it comes to the Greater Louisville housing market, one of the things that we look at month over month, and then we bring the information to you, is in regards to inventory. And inventory, when we're talking about that, that just simply means how many properties are available for purchase in today's market. So here we are at the top of July, and we're going to look at July as it compares to last month of June. And to give you greater context, we're also going to look at as it compares to the top of the year, and then also the year trends this time last year, right? So when we're looking at the number of properties available for purchase, here at the top of July in the Greater Louisville market, we have 2,896 choices for buyers. That's a lot of choices. 4 weeks ago, we had 2,651 choices, or homes available for purchase. So it's up a little bit in this last month here as we go into midsummer. Now at the top of the year, we were at 2,402. So we're up from that as well. And this time last year, here's what's really fascinating. So in July of last year, July of 2024, we were at 2,238 homes. So in a year's time, we've gone from 2,238 to 2,896. So what does that mean? It means that the sellers have slightly a bit more competition. However, it also means that buyers have more choice. So much choice that buyers have almost a 30% greater choice when it comes to choosing the property that they want to buy next than they did this time last year. Here at the Price Group, we're very much committed to bringing you monthly market updates so you know exactly how our local Louisville housing market is trending. Whether you're looking to buy or sell, or you're just tracking what the market does because of the investment in the property or properties you own, either way, it's important knowledge for all of us to have, right? So another thing that we look at is we look at the average sold price, which is different from the list price. This is the price point that the buyer is actually buying for and the seller is actually selling for, all right? So today, when we look at the Greater Louisville area, so that covers a large bit of geographical area, right? So Greater Louisville, today here in July of 2025, the average sales price is hovering right around $334,457. So let's call that $335. Now, where was that 4 weeks ago? Well, 4 weeks ago, when we go to that exact measurement, it was a blip higher at $358. Now, the start of 2025, it was still a little bit higher there too, at $361. Now, this time last year, it was $332, almost $333. So the takeaway from that is that the market here in July is basically the same in terms of the average sold price, with a breath higher than it was this time last year. So this time last year, midsummer, we were looking specifically at an average sold price of $332,901. And this time, as we hit midsummer, July of 2025, we are at $334,457 as an average sales price. So over that 12-month cycle, we've held pretty steady here in the Greater Louisville area. Here at the Price Group, we're committed to making sure you understand what's happening in our housing market month over month. And one of the ways we're going to do that is also by looking at the average days on market for sold properties. Now, you might have heard me talk about this in the past. Average days on market when we're looking at sold properties does not mean how long it took the seller from deciding to sell to giving the keys to their new buyer and walking away with their net proceeds check. No, average days on market means from the day that it was announced to the public market for sale, this house is for sale, how many days did it take until the seller accepted an offer they found satisfactory from a buyer that submitted an offer they wanted to write? That stays on market for properties that do end up selling and getting to the closing table. So a shorter way of saying that is, how long does it take to go from for sale to under contract? Well, in the Greater Louisville area, today, here in midsummer of 2025 in July, it is taking right over a month at 37 days. Now, that is not a big change from where we were 4 weeks ago at the top of the summer, because 4 weeks ago we were at 35 days. So we just have a 2-day variance. Now, it is a big change since the start of 2025. At the top of the year in January, we were at 52 days. So at the top of the year, it was taking about 2 months, and now it's taking a little over 1. Now, this time last year, relatively the same. In July of 2024, it was taking 32 days. So 32 days last summer to 37 days this summer. And this tells us that there are plenty of buyers out there shopping, because the buyers are making offers that the sellers are finding acceptable, and properties are going from for sale to under contract to closed. When we're talking about monthly market updates in the real estate marketplace here at the Price Group at Keller Williams, one of our favorite things to watch carefully is the absorption rate. So the absorption rate measures the supply, which are the number of properties available for purchase, against the demand, which is represented by the number of properties that do sell. And the reason that that is representative of the demand is because that is representative of the amount of buyers who are serious and making decisions and moving through the transaction in the market. So we're looking at inventory compared to closed properties. So all the sellers in comparison to buyers that come through and make the offer that a seller finds acceptable. That's absorption rate. So another way to think about it is, what we're saying is, let's pretend that we froze the marketplace, which would never happen, okay? But like, we froze the marketplace and no new listings entered the field, okay? So how long would it take us, with the current pace of the demand, the current pace of the buyers, how long would it take to sell all the property that's available? And we're looking at it through the lens of the Greater Louisville market. Well, today here in midsummer, July of 2025, it would take just a little over 2 months. 2.07 to be exact. 4 weeks ago, we were right there at the same mark. At the top of the summer, it was taking 2.11. So, I mean, what is that? 4/100ths of a point difference. So basically the same. Now, at the start of the year, at the start of 2025, the absorption rate was slightly higher at 2.81 months. And this time last year, it was 1.95. So what that tells us is that at all those different little milestones across the 12-month most recent history of the Greater Louisville housing market, our absorption rate has been super stable, right at 2 months. Now, what does that tell us? Well, you know, if you're studying the academics of real estate, then you would know that anything 5 months or less is considered a seller's market. 5 to 6 months is considered a balanced market, and 6 months plus into that 7-month area is considered a buyer's market. So here in Greater Louisville, when we look at the amount of properties that are for sale versus the amount of properties that are closing, and we measure those two metrics against one another, basically again, answering the question of, if no new property came to market and we continued with the same demand of buyers that we have, how long would it take for us to sell everything? And right now, here in midsummer of 2025, the answer is 2 months. So, hey sellers, let's go. If you're talking real estate and how it's trending, you can't really have that conversation without talking interest rate. So if you followed along with me in our monthly conversations about market updates in the Greater Louisville area, you understand that the interest rate is the cost to borrow the money to buy the house that you want to buy, right? It's the cost of doing business through a mortgage. So one of the things that we pay attention to is tracking the interest rate. The interest rate, since it is the cost of borrowing money, it can also impact a buyer's affordability. So with that being said, we pay attention to it. So what are the interest rates today here in kind of this midsummer, July space of 2025? Well, for a 30-year mortgage, the average interest rate is 6.67%. The 15-year rate is, you're gonna love it, it's got a different number at the top, 5.91%. Now, in comparison to this time 4 weeks ago, spoiler alert, today they're a little lower than they were at the top of the summer. At the top of the summer, the 30-year rate was at 6.98%, and the 15-year rate was at 6.25%. Now, when we rewind and think to the top of 2025, we started the year at the 30-year rate being an average of 7.17%, with the 15-year rate being 6.50%. I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, and the summary is, right now, the rates are lower than the comparison to this time a month ago or at the top of the year. So, hey, let's talk about what they were doing this time last year. How have they changed year over year? Well, in midsummer 2024, the 30-year rate was at 7.13%, and the 15-year rate was at 6.47%. So yes, the verdict is still the same. They are lower today right now than they were this time last year. So what does this mean? It means that the rates have decreased and that they remain under the US 50-year trend of average mortgage rate. So whoa, let's talk that through. If you look at all the mortgage rates for the past 50 years in the United States, and you took the average of them, the average 30-year mortgage rate you would find for a 50-year history is 7.1%. So anytime you have an interest rate for your mortgage that is right around that 7%, you are actually just spot on right at the average. Now, if you get a rate that's lower than 7%, then your rate is below our 50-year average for our country when it comes to interest rates. Overall, when you look at the whole 12-month picture, the rates have been relatively consistent and relatively stable. Here at the Price Group at Keller Williams, we are absolutely committed to being your #1 real estate resource of choice. And part of doing that is making sure that we are always providing you with accurate, factual, and up-to-date information about what exactly is going on in the housing market and how it impacts you, whether it is impacting the equity you are currently building or impacting or influencing the decisions you might be making about your next move or your next investment. You can count on us, you can depend upon us to bring you the latest and greatest quick, succinct updates each month. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and follow along, and we will honor our commitment to you to always keeping you up to speed on just exactly what is going on month over month in the Greater Louisville housing market. I'm Emily Price with the Price Group at Keller Williams. Hit the subscribe button right now.